What's going on, guys? This is Rob. If you guys enjoy my content, make sure you hit the subscribe button and make sure you hit that little bell so you never miss out on my sexy voice. What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and before we begin, I want to let you guys know this video is sponsored by my beautiful hair. And if you want to have beautiful hair just like this, make sure you guys hit the subscribe button, because then you'll get more of my sexy voice, and my sexy voice gives you better hair. It's true. Oh, it's true. It's 100% true. I know a lot of you guys don't believe me, but it is true. Maestro Hulk and Professor Hulk. I think these are entirely possible. Like, okay, here's a cool thing. All right, here's a whole reason why I kind of get into this. I was looking at the comments section of the World War Hulk video that I did, and a lot of you guys were like made some really good points, like a lot of really good points. But one of the best points that came out of that was really from like maybe 4 or 5 of you guys, and you said like it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to bring back the character of Betty Ross. And the reason why is because with the character of Betty Ross, she was in the first Incredible Hulk movie with Edward Norton, and then we basically haven't seen her since. And Marvel's really like distanced themselves from that movie. There's been no reference to Abomination. There's been no reference to like Betty Ross herself. There's been no reference to any of that stuff. Even to the guy, Emil Blonsky, you know, just the things that he did in order to become Abomination. None of that exists. We've seen neither hide nor hair of that. The only thing from the Incredible Hulk film that was carried over was Thunderbolt Ross. And that makes sense because he's such an intrinsic part of the Bruce Banner Incredible Hulk mythos. But then I would say so is Betty Ross. So it really didn't make a whole lot of sense to me to not really bring Betty Ross over. But a lot of you guys said that's a really good point. And my whole idea of the Incredible Hulk transitioning from his standard Hulk form to Worldbreaker or even Heart of the Monster Hulk was contingent on like the death of Betty Ross. Because as we know from Marvel Comics, the reason why Worldbreaker Hulk came into existence, why Hulk was elevated to that level of anger, is because during the events of Planet Hulk, his wife and unborn child were his unborn child was believed to have been dead, and his wife was most definitely killed. And so because of that, like it just pushed his anger to new heights, because what little happiness that he found had been yanked away. And we really know just from general knowledge of the Incredible Hulk mythos that his feelings for Betty Ross are more significant than anybody else's. One of the other really good points that you guys made was, well, maybe it'll be Black Widow. Maybe Black Widow will be the person who will die that will lead to Bruce Banner transitioning to become Worldbreaker Hulk. But that's kind of the crazy thing, is the more I thought about that, the more I thought about what went down in Avengers Infinity War. A little bit of a spoiler here, you know, I mean, the movie's been out for a week and a half, 2 weeks. It's the highest grossing Marvel movie to date. I'm pretty sure it is anyway. It's if you haven't seen it by now, then I don't know what to tell you. When it comes to like Bruce Banner and Black Widow, I think the idea of them having a romance was toyed with. I think the idea of having them, you know, engage in a romance was interesting and it was there, but I don't think the feelings that Bruce Banner has for Black Widow in the MCU would be enough that if she died, he would just push to a new level of anger. So maybe Worldbreaker Hulk just doesn't exist. Like maybe that will never happen. But if it doesn't happen, then something will have to happen to the Hulk. And the reason why is because in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, there's never been a movie that involves the Avengers ensemble or the involvement of the Incredible Hulk that does not see him have his moment. That doesn't really see him have like just kind of pop off and everything goes awry, right? Like we saw that in the first Avengers film. You know, like Bruce Banner returns as the Incredible Hulk and just kind of like, you know, the personalities are kind of working in unison. The Incredible Hulk realizes, hey, it's my job to protect the Earth, and Bruce Banner wants to protect the Earth. And so it's kind of a seamless transition from one to the other for Bruce Banner to let the Incredible Hulk persona come out. As a result, the entire battle was shifted in favor of the Avengers when the Incredible Hulk arrived. Plus, he also caught Iron Man, and don't even tell me, you guys, don't even tell me, when you guys saw the trailer for Avengers and you're like, dude, the Incredible Hulk catches Iron Man. Like, don't tell me you weren't hyped when you saw. I was like, okay, this movie's gonna be balls amazing. It's gonna be amazeballs is what it's gonna be. But then you also go into like Avengers 2, and you have the Incredible Hulk who fights the the Hulkbuster armor and just like rips it to shreds. And then you have Thor Ragnarok, where you have Thor fighting the Incredible Hulk, and basically like the Incredible Hulk wins. He always comes out on top. And then you transition to Infinity War, and that fight was 1.5 minutes long, and it was the Incredible Hulk getting a couple blows in, and then Thanos beating on him like a side of beef, and then the Incredible Hulk was too scared to come out again. So because of the fact that Infinity War and Avengers 4 are basically the same, like a singular movie split into 2 halves, it makes sense that it follows the transition of the Incredible Hulk in the sense that he'll have his huge hulked out moment. And if that happens, what version of the Incredible Hulk are we gonna see? And that's when I kind of get into the idea of like, that's when I talked about Worldbreaker Hulk and that kind of a thing. But in this video, the idea of like Professor Hulk or even Maestro Hulk is really, really intriguing, because I still stick by the idea that just because Thanos has the Infinity Gauntlet now does not mean he's going to have the Infinity Gauntlet 5 years from now. And whether it's because somebody whether it's because one of the Avengers comes back or some superhero we haven't seen before grabs the Infinity Gauntlet from the future and comes back, something's going to have to give there. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw like 2 Infinity Gauntlets in the same story. And the reason why is because in Marvel, you've never seen that. It's the one thing from Marvel Comics that you've never seen is 2 Infinity Gauntlets in the exact same story. And we know from the interview the Russo brothers have done that this movie is supposed to like break new ground and just kind of like shatter these different things and break away from like the traditional comic book story and tell a story that hasn't been told before. And how amazing would it be if someone traveled back in time with the Infinity Gauntlet from 5 years in the future and then like fought against Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet in the modern day? I have no idea how that would work out, no idea how that would transpire, but it would be cool. But with regards to the idea of Maestro, this is the first one I want to talk about. I wouldn't go as far as to say Maestro would be the one to do it, because it wouldn't really be something Maestro would do, just because of the way that his character is designed. I would say Maestro, Maestro wouldn't stand a chance against Thanos. Well, going by the MCU evidence, maybe. We don't know how powerful the Infinity Gauntlet is. If it's been reduced in power by half, I'd still say Maestro wouldn't win, because even with like the power of the Infinity Gauntlet, even cut in half, you're talking about the Mind Stone, the Time Stone, the Reality Stone, the Space Stone. The ability to just like the Soul Stone, just like dominate the environment around Maestro. Even if it's not on a universal scale and it's in a localized space, the Maestro probably wouldn't win there. But the Maestro is a warlord. So here's the deal. So Maestro Hulk was a version of the Incredible Hulk that originally appeared prior to the events of Future Imperfect. And that's one of the things that a lot of people get wrong. I don't remember the exact issue he appeared in. He was a Peter David creation, but it was one of those things where he was kind of alluded to and then like you saw him a little bit. But really, Future Imperfect is like the first story that really features Maestro Hulk. And it's really the story that kind of got his claim to fame. So at some point in the future, what you end up having is this realm where really the Earth has kind of been like devastated by nuclear destruction. And the result is that because the Incredible Hulk is literally a walking gamma bomb, he basically started absorbing all of this nuclear radiation, and it made him a lot stronger, but it also sort of drove him a little bit mad. But what he ended up doing was basically consolidating the remnants of humanity into a singular city and then ruled that city with an iron fist. Now, what you had is you also had Rick Jones, who was the kind of sidekick of the Incredible Hulk when he was younger, his friend and what have you, who was older in this future, and then basically brought the Incredible Hulk from the present day into the future, and the Maestro beat the hell out of him. It was amazing. Dude, the Maestro beat the absolute tar out of the Incredible Hulk. It was amazing. It was one of the coolest fights. What is it? I think he breaks his neck. He shatters his collarbone. He like thrashes him. It's awesome, because what Marvel established with Maestro Hulk is that he's basically a version of the Hulk who is a whole lot stronger and a lot smarter. He's basically a warlord. Like it's one of the most badass things. Plus he looks cool. He's got like gray hair that runs down, and I think he's got like a goatee or a mustache or what have you. He looks pretty solid. I would love to see that version of the Incredible Hulk from the future, because seeing Maestro Hulk against Thanos with no Infinity Gauntlet, I think Maestro would win. If I'm being honest, like if I'm being 100% honest with you guys, I really believe Maestro Hulk would probably win. Maybe he wouldn't, but like I think in the MCU, I think Maestro Hulk would be able to pull it off, because he's super smart. He's a cunning strategist. He's wildly capable, and he's just like insanely strong. So I think he'd be able to take on Thanos. But then you get into like Professor Hulk. So here's the deal. So what happened in Marvel Comics is the Incredible Hulk, after the writing of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, was okay. And it was just a line of comics that were there. But in truth, Marvel was exploding so rapidly in the 1960s that like everything was selling. It didn't really matter what it was. If it had Marvel's name on it, aside from like really, really, really bad stories like the original X-Men, pretty much everything sold. And so what you ended up having was the Incredible Hulk, who was taken over by a guy named Bill Mantlo. And Bill Mantlo changed the whole dynamic of the Hulk. This is where you start to get into the idea that that Bruce Banner himself was a victim of a very abusive father. And so the Incredible Hulk was just kind of a manifestation of all this anger and rage that Bruce Banner kept inside of him. There was really no form for all this anger and all this pent-up aggression and things like that until Bruce Banner was hit with a gamma bomb bomb, and then it all manifested in the form of the Incredible Hulk. And that's what the Hulk is when Bill Mantlo wrote it. Now, Bill Mantlo eventually left, and then a guy named Peter David took over. And Peter David did a lot of things to expand the Hulk, but his run was really predicated on what Mantlo had done. And so that's when you started getting into things like the idea of like Nightmare Hulk, you know, this notion of like Dark Hulk, Devil Hulk, things like that. These versions of the Incredible Hulk that represented tormented aspects of his life. Some of them even represent, like one of them even represented his dad. And so it was cool when he got into that whole thing. But in that story, what ended up happening is Bruce Banner came to this realization that all these different versions of the Hulk exist out there because he's essentially manifested them. And so what he did is he basically merged the Gray Hulk and the Green Hulk together into a singular person, or really into himself, and then we got the Professor. Well, it wasn't originally the Professor. Originally, back in the Incredible Hulk Volume 1, 377, it was just Merged Hulk. That's really all it was called. But at the time, it was the most powerful version of the Incredible Hulk that existed, because what it was Bruce Banner's ideal perception of himself. It was like Bruce Banner sitting down and saying, if I wanted to be the Incredible Hulk, and if I had total control over the Incredible Hulk, you know, over all the powers he possesses, his healing factor, so on and so forth, his unlimited strength, if I had total control over all those things, what would I be like? And that's Merged Hulk. The Professor was a name that was given later on down the line because it's basically all the powers of the Incredible Hulk with the brain of Bruce Banner. It's pretty badass. He was pretty solid in that regard. I could see either one of those really kind of coming out here. And the reason why is I think Professor Hulk is probably more reasonable than Maestro. Maestro is really more just me fanboying. It's really more just like a wish that I would love to see. There's really no reason to believe that would happen. And in fact, it is pretty far-fetched to make an argument that Maestro would show up, because then you'd have to explain the whole idea of the Maestro, where he comes from, why he believes what he does, why he does the kind of things he does, how dangerous is he, how strong is he? You'd have to explain all those different things. But with Professor Hulk, it's a whole lot easier. Professor Hulk, I mean, we haven't seen Gray Hulk. We haven't seen like Joe Fixit, right? For those of you guys who don't know, when the Incredible Hulk was originally created in Marvel Comics, he was gray. And the problem was that Marvel couldn't keep the color scheme going. And so what they did is they made him green instead. And so later on, Marvel came back and retconned it and said, actually, that original gray version was a version called Joe Fixit. And then the green version popped up as Savage Hulk, who you've been reading about ever since. You just hadn't seen that version, Joe Fixit, until now. And then he finally makes his return. Joe Fixit was pretty cool. He wasn't as powerful as the other Hulks, but he was pretty cool. He was actually like a bouncer in Las Vegas, I think it was, which is kind of funny to see him like do his whole thing. Joe Fixit was kind of cool. It depends on who writes him, really. He has his fans, you know, it's however you want to go with it. I believe we've covered the story that had Joe Fixit. I'm pretty sure we did that as part of like the whole Greg Pak run on the Incredible Hulk. But the fact remains here, when it comes to the idea, because we don't really have Gray Hulk, what you could literally do is you could have the aftermath of Infinity War. And you could basically say like Bruce Banner sits down and has like a heart-to-heart conversation with the Incredible Hulk. And the Incredible Hulk's like, I'm scared. Like I'm really scared. I've never faced anyone like Thanos before. I've never fought a being of such immense strength that he overpowered me in less than a minute and crushed me whole-handedly. Like I've never faced a force like that before. You know, and it would make sense that the Incredible Hulk has felt fear, because unlike the Marvel Comics, where it's like the Incredible Hulk just keeps getting angrier and angrier and angrier, and that's it. The MCU's added a lot of personality to the Incredible Hulk, so he's very much his own person, which he's designed to be, a wholly separate personality from Bruce Banner. And so when you're talking about this version of the Incredible Hulk that has his own personality, that feels love, feels anger, wants to be left alone, wants to be left in peace, has people that he cares about, all those different things, it makes sense that you can in turn add the emotion of fear and say the Incredible Hulk's just scared. But then you have the point where it kind of switches dichotomies, right? Like Bruce Banner's supposed to be the scared one. Bruce Banner's supposed to be the coward. He's supposed to be the one running from the fight as opposed to running into the fight. But then you get into Infinity War and it's a totally different dynamic. Bruce, you know, like the Incredible Hulk's like, I'm scared. I really don't want to fight. I don't want to be here. You know, I don't want to have any part of this. And then Bruce Banner's like, well, then fine, I'll take care of it. And so what you could do is have this kind of conversation between the two where Bruce Banner's like, look, man, you got to toughen up, but I think I know how we can win. We can just become one person. Like we can just merge into a singular person. Instead of me turning into you turning into you, the Incredible Hulk, and you, the Incredible Hulk, turning into me, Bruce Banner, we can just be one singular person. You give me all your powers and all your strength. Let me basically run the show, and like we can win this. And so it allows the Incredible Hulk to be part of the fight without actually being part of the fight. That's the only way I could really imagine Professor Hulk being involved here. But again, that's a far fetch. I mean, I have no idea what direction they're going to go in for the Hulk. It could just be that the Incredible Hulk's like, yeah, man, I'm tough now. All right, cool, let's do this. And then he just jumps back into the fight, and would probably get wrecked like everybody else. I have no clue. I mean, I'm really just kind of curious in terms of how these things are going to go. Yeah, it's wild. Like it's really, really wild. And it's really fun to talk about these kind of things. I love making these videos, and you guys apparently love watching them, and I'll keep making them as long as you guys watch them. So that's kind of how that goes. But with that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button, become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.